From the very start, we agreed to certain ideals for First Nations to work toward filling that niche, that last keystone. If a tribe wants to do something, but they needed just that little help to get them over, or that little piece is missing, that we'll try at First Nations to fill that piece. And one of the things is the cornerstone of all that is that this idea that Indian people, you're sovereign. We have to find a way to utilize the people's talents, their ingenuity, and their energy. If we're going to be recognized, let's not do it because we told the world how great we are. Let the world recognize us for what we've done, not what we said.
First Nations Development Institute has been around for 30 years, and we've had the luxury of being able to do a lot of things in the past 30 years that probably hadn't been done in Indian country before. And I always like to tell people that, we are kind of this think and do tank of Indian country, and a lot of what we've been able to do in the last 30 years is kind of the proverbial throwing pasta against a wall to see what sticks, that we've been able to go out there and try lots of things that people weren't trying in Indian country before.
For so long, Indian country was run by non-Indians. Indian people, unlike any other ethnic minority in the United States, we have assets. We have the land. We have natural resources. We have the assets, we just never controlled those assets. That was always the job of the U.S. federal government. And so what happened was Indian country really became a one-sector economy, where you really just had the governmental sector. And so what we realized is that we know that Native people are sovereign nations with the right to self-determination and have had strong tribal governments since time immemorial. And realizing that any healthy economy needs three sectors, and that would be the governmental sector, the private sector, and then the nonprofit sector. And so in our approach to economic development in Indian country is to strengthen all three of those areas. And a lot of the work that we do is in the private and nonprofit sector. We're
Painfully aware that there needs to be other institutions in Indian country who are doing like-minded work, but maybe have a different focus. In the case of Notabegay III Foundation, they do a lot of work on food, diet, and health in Indian country, trying to make healthy bodies for Indian kids. But we also understand that these organizations are pretty new to Indian country. The not-for-profit sector in Indian country, probably 15, 20 years old. And one of the things we're lucky enough to be able to do is to share and mentor with some of these newer organizations and help them run down that path and that learning curve a lot faster, so they're not tripping over their shoelaces and making the same mistakes we did.
The way that First Nations has really helped not only me, but I think this organization, is that we're very young. And it was just very comforting, and it's been an amazing resource for us to be able to call upon them for the most basic technical assistance about how do we build an organization, how do we build the best financial department manageable. We're actually just getting ready to launch a small grant making program, and they were the first people I called for guidance. And can you tell me the pros and the cons of this, and really that kind of institutional memory and track record has been indispensable.
First Nations approach, while it is, yes, economic development and everything is through that lens, we focus in all areas of community development. An example in the Northwest would be the canoe journeys, the traditional canoe journeys of the Northwest peoples, supporting that kind of work, all the way to supporting work to develop an investor education component for high school students.
Every year our ancestors estimated their needs based on what they used in previous years.
That's right.
Knowledge of how to handle money might not be the basis of all leadership, but in our modern world, we need strong financial leadership so that we can build our communities. The approach that First Nations Development Institute is taking with our students is to make sure that the material and that the approach to teaching this is culturally based, so that it's relevant to our students, so that the message gets across.
In order to have a successful community, an accessible economy, you have to have successful people. and you have to have whole people, and that's really our approach again, is kind of this holistic, whole approach to economic development in Indian country.
You know, we have 30 years of track record, and not just track record in being able to do real effective blocking and tackling economic development work in Indian country, but we also have 30 years of research and writing and a whole bunch of institutional knowledge that we've put out there as new models for Indian country. And equally as important as our track record is that there's a lot of perception by donors and investors in Indian country that Indian country is fraught with risk. The service that we can provide to the donor community is that we can be terrific stewards of their money. And when projects start to fall apart, you know, as an engaged grant maker, as an engaged economic development organization, First Nations Development Institute can jump in and mitigate those risks and make sure the project is carried forward.
I think traditionally, when organizations that have tried to raise money to support Indian country, it's really been this idea of Indians being impoverished and being in poverty and needing help, you know, and this idea of giving them a handout. And I think what is unique about First Nations approach is it's definitely not a handout, it's a hand up. Because for so long, Indian country and Indian people have been told that we can't do this, that we can't be self-sufficient, that we can't be self-sustaining, that we need outside help, that, you know, we need to be told how to do this. And so when we go into Indian country and we work hand in hand with Native communities, that's where the hope comes, because people realize we can do this.